Welcome back to Learn SKN, and today we're going to be continue looking at international trade. We're looking at some factors that influence international trade, both from the import perspective and the exports perspective, right? So before we jump into that, you know what to do: like, subscribe, and hit the bell. All right, so let's just jump into the content. We're looking at factors that influence international trade. We look at some factors, that would affect whether we engage in trade or not, or to what extent we engage in trade. And so one of the first factors that we have here is a very obvious one: domestic income levels. You can see how domestic income levels can impact or influence international trade. Because clearly, if you are a rich country, if you are rich, if you have money, then you'll again acquire that international flavor, that international taste, and as such, you are going to import more. So you're going to import higher than if your domestic level of incomes were low. So higher income enables consumers to purchase more imports, and lower income allow fewer imports. Simple as that. As simple as that. You all see it all the time, right? When you get some extra money, you buy something, you order something online. You ain't got the money, you run down the road, buy it quick, and then that's that. Right? So domestic income levels is one thing that can influence international trade. If the country is rich, if the country has a high income level, then you would know that their imports would be higher. Look at China. All of a sudden, China was all importing everything America now. Before them America was really, beefing. iPhone was the biggest thing over there. They want anything America got, they want to. Right? They want to basically emulate America. Look at places like Dubai. Right? Dubai imports, you see a lot of muscle cars, a lot of fancy cars, Lamborghini, Corvette, Ferrari, all those kind of things. Mercedes being imported from Europe and all over the world because they got the money like that. Right? But when a country, the national income level is not that high, then you'll see regular Joe cars being purchased. You'll see normal consumption levels and things like that. So so domestic income levels, the higher ones, more national import, more imports. So increase international trade. Lower income levels, then naturally fewer imports. Then we have what we call the exchange rate. I know some of y'all will be familiar with this, the exchange rate. Right? That's just how much one currency is as compared to another currency. The value of one currency versus another. That's the exchange rate. How much of one currency can I get for another? And so you know that in the Caribbean, not in the Caribbean, but in the OECS. In the OECS, we have exchange rate, or exchange rate is pegged, our dollar is pegged to the US dollar. And the normal exchange rate is 2.71, right? When you're buying. But when you're selling, it's 2.6 whatever. But when you're buying, it's 2.71. So that's the exchange rate. So 1 US costs 2.71 EC dollars exchange rate. And so you know that if the exchange rate is too high, then that means that you would not be importing as much. If the exchange rate is too high, imports would be lower. If it's a low exchange rate, imports would be higher. Like for example in St. Kitts, nobody really imports much from England, right? Because we can't lift up that 5-to-1 exchange rate there. 4-to-1, 5-to-1, whichever one it is. It's a little too high for us. And so we'll import from America. That is a lot closer, 2.71, in terms of exchange rate. Right? So if exchange rate is too high, it costs too much of your currency to get that foreign currency, and that means that your imports would be lower. You're not going to bring anything in as much because it costs too much to import. Right? But the flip side is also true. Exports might increase. Right? You might increase exports if you're going to get a higher value in return. So let's say that things cost, what I produce in here, I will get a lot of money overseas. Of course, I'm going to want to export, man. I'm going to want to export. to earn that foreign currency. Because when the foreign currency land here and the exchange rate is so good, that means now I'm basically rich. So if I go export to England, I would do so in a heartbeat, because I know that when the pound reach here, man, I'm rolling in it. I'm going to roll in the money, because the pound will be so much more than the local currency. So you can see how exchange rate can affect your international trade. And we're going to look at that separately later on, exchange rates. Right? So the higher the value of the currency, the greater the level of imports. The lower the level of the currency, the lower the level of imports. So let's say I have an example right here. Let's say if 1 US equal 2 TT, equation A, then it changes from 1 US to 4 TT. So it gone up. Equation A shows a higher value of the TT, meaning it's close to the US, so the value is more expensive. It's about almost as on parity, it's almost on par. Right? The value is higher. Right? Because it's 2 to 1. Right? They can therefore demand many pencil cases. So what I'm saying is that because it's so close, man, of course I'm going to import stuff. I'm going to import a lot. Because it's just as much as I'm buying it down the road in a sense. So I'm going to import a lot. But if the value of my currency is lower, now, as in equation B, where it is 4, then, you know, equation B shows a lower value of TT, Trinidadian have to spend 4 TT to buy the same pencil case for $1, then therefore, they're going to demand less. And so you can see exchange rate can impact your import. If the exchange rate is too high, then imports will be lower. If it's low, import will be higher. So we're saying here, if the value of the currency compared to the next one is higher, imports go up. If the value of a currency is lower compared to the other one, imports going down. Right? Because imagine you got exchange, you got to find a whole $40 now just for 1 US. You're going to import nothing. It's going to be too expensive to go get all of these dollars to get just one. Right? So that's the exchange rate right there. Then the next factor that influences international trade is domestic product prices versus foreign product prices. That's a very straightforward one. It's about prices. If it's cheaper overseas, you buy it. Cheaper local, you buy it local. Right? So if the domestic product prices are high compared to foreign prices, the country will import more. And we see that all the time here in the country. Sometimes, when people are charged here for certain things, you could buy 2 of that and still clear it at customs and then reach the price that they're charging locally. Right? So that's a major factor for sure. Sometimes you're doing the calculation like, man, it is cheaper to import, and so you import. Because the domestic price just cannot measure up, it's just too high. And so that you can see how that clearly can influence international trade. If domestic price is nice and reasonable and low, then I have no reason to import. If the domestic price is high compared to importation, then you bet the bottom dollar I'm going to import. Because it's cheaper to import than to make it. If I have to wait a week, I'm going to import it. Because it's cheap, I'm going to save money by importing. And so that's a clear-cut case of how domestic prices can influence international trade. Then we have quality of domestic goods. Quality of domestic goods. Again, very similar to the price, right? Because if something is of poor quality compared to the imported one, then you could see where you're going to spend your dollar. You're going to spend your dollar on the higher quality good, especially if it's a bang for buck situation. So in if domestic goods are of a low quality, when compared to imported goods, the country will import more and buy fewer locally. If domestic goods are of a high quality, when compared to imported goods, the country will import fewer and buy more locally. Set those parables. So all things remaining equal, that's what's going to happen. More recently though, developed countries are finding that their locally produced quality goods are being outsold by cheaper goods of lower quality. And you know, you could relate to that because a lot of people buying Chinese stuff still, right? Even in the Caribbean, a lot of people jump on the websites, buy some $5 shirt, you know, some $5 dresses and all kind of ridiculous things. One wash and they're done, right? So we know that happening still. We know a lot of people still importing some low quality products. One of the main reasons, money, right? One of the main reasons, money. So you can see the argument both ways there, as it relates to, because I mean, look at our farm produce. We produce some high quality food, some nice squash, some nice potatoes, nice tomatoes, all that sweet pepper, nice sweet peppers. But roll up in Rams, roll up in Valley Mart, Best Buy, they're still importing. It's still importing, right? So you can see how that goes. Next one, information, the mass media and changing tastes of consumer. So here we're saying now, remember I keep mentioning that some of us have an international taste, a foreign taste. So once you got the foreign taste, right, you see it on TV, you see it on social media, whatever, you develop that foreign flavor. And because of that, you import more things than you buy locally, because all of a sudden the local products just can't do for you. You want to see advertised on TV, you want to see the one on IG, you want to see the one on Snap, whatever, TikTok, that's the one you want. And so you got this nice flavor because your palate has changed because of your exposure to all of these accounts, these IG accounts, these TikTok accounts, whatever. And so your style, your taste, everything changes. And because of that, the local industry cannot supply that for you. You're going overseas. And so if your taste skew more towards the international, the foreign, then of course that means that your import would be higher. Right? You'll import more from overseas if you got that flavor, that international taste. Okay, good. The goods produced in the country together with the taste of the consumers. So again, very similar to what I just explained, right? If a country produces goods for trade, but its customers do not consume these goods, then the country will have to import what they consume. Distinguished historian Eric Williams, very distinguished man indeed, described Caribbean economy as one in which we consume what we do not produce and produce what we do not consume. An example of this phenomenon is the export bananas and importing apples. Although it is true that the Caribbean people do eat bananas, we prefer foreign fruits such as apples and grapes. If a country consumes what they produce, it will import less. And you see the slogan always go around, buy local, eat local, right? So it's saying here that if we export what we produce and import what we don't, then naturally we're going to import more, right? So it's a different taste. It's all about your taste in the country. Like they say here, we have so much domestic foods here that nobody really like. Yep, we want the fancy pear, we want the fancy grapes, and not the sea grapes, you know, the fancy grape, vineyard grapes, all that kind of stuff. Cause that's our taste now. Has a high income level, we can export more to them, right? If they let me put it this way, we would not be willing to export a lot to a poor country, right? We'd be more willing to export more to a high income country, your America, your Canada, England, those places. So based on the income level of that country, that would determine whether we're willing to export with them and export to them or not. Because I don't see us exporting goods to a country that is poorer than us, in a sense, in terms of GDP and human development, in that kind of stuff, right? So foreign income levels would impact exports. If they are high, we export more to them. If they are low, export less to them. Remember, I was explaining exchange rate of above there and how that impacts exports. What we were saying here is that exports would increase if we know that we're going to get a higher return. Like for example, we'll quicker export to a place where the currency is stronger than ours, it has a higher value than ours. We'll quicker export to that place. Like I said, we will quickly export to England because the exchange rate is so sweet, right? You export, you get pounds in return. That's a lot of money. Then let's say we want to export to maybe Jamaica or some other country with a lower exchange rate. Right? So the exchange rate would impact our level of exports. The higher the exchange rate, the more we want to export to that country. So if the value of our currency is low, then we're going to want to export to a country where their currency is rich, is higher. Right? So we're going to export to that country. Right? And also, our stuff will be in a higher demand also from that end. Because they are saying we're getting this cheaper good. So let's import more from our end. So we'll quicker export to those countries. Then we have, okay, so we're going on the same premise, but just the opposite. So domestic prices versus foreign product prices. Again, if domestic prices are higher, you're going to export more because you get a higher price overseas. Right? So if I know, let's say I'm producing bananas in St. Kitts, and on the local market, banana costs $5 a pound. But somewhere else, I could get them for $20 a pound. Naturally, I'm going to export because the price overseas is more conducive to me. I prefer that. And so if the domestic price is lower than the foreign price, then I'm going to export more because I want a lot of money from overseas. So if domestic product price are high compared to foreign product price, the country will not be able to export large quantity. But if domestic price are low compared to the foreign price, because some, like we are in the Caribbean, and some of our stuff are considered exotic. And if they are considered exotic, that means people can pay a higher price for them. Right? And so, yeah man, I'm going to export to that place. Alright, quality of imported goods. Here is now. If the quality of the good that we produce on the island is of a lower standard than what they're producing out there, then it doesn't make sense to export. Because they're not going to buy it. Because to them, an inferior product coming in. So, keep that to the local market. Right? But if the quality of your product is higher than what they are making over there, then of course, you export your high quality product and get it sold. Right? So, it's basically the opposites than what we did before. Information and changing taste, again. If you see something that shows that a foreign product is, how should I put it? If you realize that you have something that the foreign country doesn't have, and based on your social media, your advertising, everything, they shine a good light on your product, then by all means export your product because people are going to be seeing it and want it. Right? And so you see that from America a lot of the times, they're exporting their taste, they export their taste, their quality, all those things overseas. That's why you see a lot of countries are like mini Americas. Because they have the same services, the same everything, and so America basically export their brand, their taste to other markets. And you see it happen all the time. Right? So, those are the factors that influence international trade. Alright? We're going to stay here for now, and when we get back here, we're going to be looking at absolute advantage and comparative advantage. So if you want to know what we discussed in that video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when Learn SKN drops another video here on the channel. Alright, so thanks for watching, thanks for listening.